Alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. And very good afternoon to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. Today we will continue again our lecture on chapter uh, 6 on the topic of communication strategy and planning. Hope that all of you are healthy and you are motivated still to listen to this recorded lecture. And I hope that all of you will get better understanding on this topic. Ladies and gentlemen, this topic will talk about the process of strategy making in corporate communication and the content of a communication strategy, planning and managing strategic communications programs and campaigns, how campaigns may persuade stakeholders into supportive behaviors toward the organizations. Let's look to the process of communication strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, when we want to communicate with the people, especially with our stakeholders, yeah, with the people who have high interest with our organization, then we have to strategize our communication so that we are able to clearly communicate what we want to deliver and give a very good understanding to the people out there or to our stakeholder about our organizations. Therefore, communication strategies involve bringing stakeholder reputation in line with the visions of organizations, reinforcing existing reputations of stakeholders if broadly in line with how the organization wants itself to be seen. So, the reasons why we communicate to our stakeholder is mainly to sell our organization, to gain their confidence, and to gain their support to our business operations. So, before we want to communicate with the audience or to the stakeholders, we have to begin with the strategic intent. Strategic intent suggests a set of communication tactics and activities that aim to affect awareness, knowledge, reputations, and behavior of important stakeholder. If you still remember, if they are definitive stakeholder, then they are our main priority. So what sort of awareness that they want, what sort of knowledge, and what kind of reputation that we want to present ourselves to our stakeholder, then we have to design it, we have to develop it so that we are able to tackle the behavior of our important stakeholders. Then we have to look at the process of communication strategy. So the process of communication strategy is the paradigms of the process of strategy making. It begins with rational planning mode, then it goes to intuitive or visionary, and incremental or emergent. So these are the things that we have to look into, meaning that rationale of planning mode, why we use that method, certain techniques, and intuitive or visionary that we have created. What actually forward-looking kind of thinking that we have, and we want to increase our visibility among our stakeholder. So the strategy formation characteristics are involve the vision, yeah, visionary of the leader, deliberate and planting. We have to plan and we have to deliberate what we want to and why we do like that. Ad hoc and spontaneous. And then it has to be analytical, bottom up and top down. This is the formations of characteristic in our strategy. So strategy formation is a strategy that consists of a combination of planned and emergent processes. And the strategy involves a general direction and not simply plans or tactics. And also, strategy is about the organization and its environment. So, how to link between corporate strategy and communication strategy? When the organization has developed their corporate strategy or designed a corporate strategy, then in order to translate their corporate strategy, they will use the communication strategy because corporate strategy cannot work on its own. Therefore, they need the communication strategy in order to translate their corporate strategy. And then the corporate strategy is more or less like in the communication strategy is inform the stakeholder about the organization or the corporation's strategy. So this is how it links between corporate strategy and communication strategy. It has to be clearly defined how to strategically communicate the corporate strategy of the organization. The content of communication strategy starts from an organization's wide assessment of the organization's reputation in the light of its vision at a particular point in time. A reputation vision gap forms the basis for the formulations of the strategic intent. When we know the level of reputation that we have at that moment, how our stakeholder actually looked at us, how they perceive us. So this is reputation and visions gap that we do when we do our analysis on reputation visions gap, yeah, using the toolkit. Then from there, we are able to fill out or we make the gap closer, we minimize the gap. Then we are able to fulfill the expectations of our stakeholder. In the organization, there are two types of communicators. First is technician and second one is manager. The communication technician is generally not involved in strategic management decision making and strategic decisions concerning communication strategy and programs, while a communication manager makes strategy or policy decisions and is held accountable for program success or failure. In the strategic messaging, organization-wide assessment of how organization is seen by stakeholder, this is sort of reputation in light of the organization's visions. The gap is the basis of strategic intent. When we want to develop, design our strategic intent, we have to look at the gap. After we have done the gap analysis, between our reputations and visions gap, then from there we develop our strategic intent. It is about the change or consolidation in a company's reputation that is intended. So, strategy stages in formulating the content of a communication strategy involve strategic intent, and then theme message, and then message style. After we have designed or we have defined our strategic intent, and then we have to create our theme messages, and now we have to decide on the message style when we are communicating with our stakeholders. Another alternative message style we have to look at, for example, the functional orientation. For example, it is a rational message style. So the symbolic orientation of rational message style is symbolic association message style, and the industrial orientation is generic message style. So under symbolic orientation, it can be also an emotional message style, and industrial orientation is preemptive message style. So in planning programs and campaign, communications program is a formulated set of activities toward targeted internal and external audiences. which may include outreach activities, community initiatives, and other ways in which organizations and their employees communicate with stakeholder audiences and has no preset endpoint. And communication campaign is restricted to the use of a mediated form of communication, for example, mass media advertising towards specific stakeholder audiences, and is restricted to a single point in time. Planning and executing program and campaigns. This is the step on how we plan and execute the programs and campaigns. First is about strategic intent. Strategic intent is where we formulate a change or consolidation of stakeholder reputations of the organization. It is based upon the gap between how the organization wants to be seen by important stakeholder groups and how it is currently seen by each of these groups. This is a summary of the communication strategy process where we have to depart from visions and the collected data on how our stakeholder actually look at us or at what level of our reputation on the eyes of our stakeholders. So from these two base vision and reputation data, then we develop our strategic intent, and then after that we define our communications objective, and then we identify and prioritize target audiences, identify team messages, and then stage number five is develop message styles, and number six is develop media strategy style, and number seven is prepare the budget. Let's continue the discussions on this process. Step number two is about defining communications objectives. Step two is defining communication objective. Appeal to stakeholders with a particular message so that they react favorably to it and change or consolidate a specific supportive behavior towards the organizations. So the keyword here is to appeal the stakeholders. And should be as tightly defined as possible. And we have to use SMART concept in defining our communication objective, where we have to be very specific with our message, and we have to be able to measure, the reactions of our stakeholder towards that message, and actionable, kind of act once they listen or receive that message, then they are able to react or take an action over that message. And the message has to be realistic in nature, something which is relevant, something which is present, and something which is real, and it has to be timely. We have to attend to the issues right at the time so that we are able to obtain the right reactions and feedback from our stakeholder. And the third step is about identify and prioritize target audiences. So at this step, we use the stakeholder salience model and the power interest matrix, where we can refer this to chapter 3 to identify the most important stakeholder groups. For example, from the stakeholder salience model, the center part is definitive stakeholder. Yeah, and we can look at that later. And from there, we're able to segment those groups into more specific target audiences that are prioritized for a particular program or campaign. So this is the stakeholder salient model. We have at the center the core stakeholder. We call them as definitive stakeholder, where they have power over the organization, they have legitimacy over the organization, and they have an urgency over the organization. So we have to define a group of stakeholders that possess these three: power, legitimacy, and urgency over the organization, and we have to prioritize them in our communication strategy. And if you look at this power interest mix, where we have from at the left we can see the power, and at the bottom here is interest mix. Yeah, we look at, for example, the A quadrant is minimal effort. If that group of stakeholders have low in terms of interest and also low in terms of power, so it requires very minimal effort from the organization. But if they fall under quadrant D, key players, they have high interest, but they have also high power. High power and high interest. So they are the key players. So at this point, we have to give priority over the stakeholders, and we have to really attend to the issues, to the problem, to the matters that raised by our key players. And step number 4 is about identifying team messages. So once we have decided a core message that can be translated into a specific campaign format and message style, then the team messages may relate to the organization as a whole or to more specific areas such as product and services. CSR, corporate social responsibility, or financial performance. So identifying the team message is very important to capture the attention and the response of our stakeholder. And stage number 5 is about develop the message style. In this step, use one of the 5 message style. For example, like persuasive kind of message style, rational message style, information message style, or just like a knowledge message style or awareness message style. Yeah. So this step can use multiple message styles simultaneously to communicate with different target audience. Okay, it is not necessarily only one, can be used multiple styles. An organization often use the same message style to communicate about certain specific areas. So the uniformity, the standard style of using the message is very important to keep them what we call that at the rhythm of the organization, and for them to clearly understand the message from the organization. And in the step number 6, where we develop a media strategy, and this step we identify the most effective and efficient means of reaching the target audiences within the given budgetary constraints. So here in the in millennium age, for example, many organizations choose the social media platform where the budget is very low and the access to that information is very wide. However, there is an issue of trustworthiness of the information because it came from the social media platform. However, they can link that social media, the informations uh, shared through social media platform with the official web page of the organization to counter confirm the information. And at this stage, or in step 6, the organization decide upon the right mix of media for a particular communication program or campaign. For example, they are using a broadcast kind of medium, for example, televisions, And then they mix with the social media platform and also the official organization web page. And last step in planning and executing programs and campaigns in communication strategy is about prepare the budget. It is the vital thing, the most important thing to uh, for us to see whether our strategy is workable, is doable or not. Because budget is the final thing in all the program that we have developed. So at this stage, most of the budget will be spent on media buying. And then, based upon the budget, practitioners may have to revise the previous steps and select a different mix of media and or adjust communication objective. So you have to work smartly within the budget constraint, but at the same time, you have to make sure you are able to reach your audience as much as possible, as effective as possible, and as efficient as possible. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's all about chapter 6, and I hope that all of you have gained a better understanding on this chapter. Thank you very much. Stay still and see you again in the next lecture. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay at home. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and salam sejahtera.